And Damon Vrabel, I mean, let's look at what's happening in other industries. You've got companies like Monsanto and Synergy who are in the biotechnology industry who are turning seeds into a currency that's debt-backed. So they're turning the neoliberal failure of fractional reserve fiat debt monstrosity, and they're bringing that to big agriculture. They're starving people because they can't afford to buy their debt-based seeds. Or how about in the copyright industry? The copyright cartel is suing everybody for fair use rights of copyrighted material. They're turning copyright into another global debt-backed currency scheme. So this plague of locusts that has brought us debt-backed nothingness and squeezed out actual capital and equity is now working its way in like Matt Taibbi's blood-sucking octopus into every little nook and cranny of every single piece of the entire economy.
Right. It's about power and control, so that everyone has to rent. Most of the people have to rent everything that they need to support their life. Whether it's food or money or what have you. And the corporate institutions, we're seeing now the reality of what corporations are. We've had this free market ideology that has unfortunately poisoned people's ability to see the truth. That corporations were founded by royal families. Corporations exist to exert power and control over territories and maintain control over commodities and resources. And now they've grown to the point where they are supranational, multinational, spread across much of the globe. There are some regions of the globe that aren't yet dominated by them. They haven't allowed the Anglo-American financial machine and the multinational corporations to move into their territories, but it's just a matter of time as the system continues growing and establishing control over all the resources and commodities, and therefore the people.
Well, yeah, I think it's interesting that in the United States of America that celebrates the idea of private property more so than anybody else out there in the world. And yet you've got a country now with roughly $14 trillion in debt. You've got unfunded liabilities on Medicaid and Social Security of another 50, 60, or $70 trillion. That means that every man, woman, and child has tens of thousands, upwards of $100,000 worth of debt hanging over their head. And anytime anybody does or says anything that's not in concert with the policies of the government, which tend to lean toward genocide and opportunistic warfare, they simply say, oh, it's time for you to pay this debt, which yesterday you didn't have to pay, but today you do. Doesn't anyone realize that they're basically living with Charles Manson in the White House? Whoever it is, Democrat or Republican, they're all psychotic Kool-Aid drinking sociopaths who are going to whip out the sword of debt to decapitate them or decapitalize them whenever it's politically convenient.
Yeah, this is the part of the reason I think they are what you're describing is because they're held hostage by the overall capital machine. But this is the civil rights issue of the 21st century. In my view, we're all in it together this time. It's not black versus white, old versus young, male versus female, east versus west, whatever. We're all in it together against the ruling elite class that controls all money and requires everyone else to be in debt in order to have liquidity and live. And the only option in that economic or in that monetary system is to continue increasing people's debt.
That's right. There should be no financialization without representation.
Right. And I don't know. I'm amazed at the power of Huxley's Brave New World. The power of the matrix, the power of the media machine to keep people distracted and confused. Like I'm talking about, like in one of my videos, I'm talking about the most important dynamic for people's future as we move into the 21st century and where things are headed over the next 50 years. And I get like 3,000 views versus, you get a sports star or a rock star on there and they get 20 million views. I'm amazed that people are happy with their debt slavery condition. It's really unbelievable to really ponder the power of the media machine. I talk to people in the Philippines or people in Brazil, people emailing me that have stumbled on my videos and they see it and they're trying to lead movements in their countries because they're feeling the pain of it. Their people are literally starving because of this monetary system. But in the US, we're in this weird matrix where people think their enslavement equals freedom.
Well, let's talk about solutions, if there are any, for a second. Typically, when you have a monolithic monstrosity, sometimes you can throw a spanner into the works. You know, I'm thinking, for example, some people have tried to do this. For example, in Canada, I believe, is where you find that magazine Adbusters, where they come up with interesting ways to re-paper over the images of advertising, to reframe all the advertising to some degree of success, although they don't seem to have really gotten really the kind of traction that one would hope. But anyway, in terms of capital markets and possible solutions, I know you've talked about auditing the Fed or cutting the national debt, but these are pretty big projects that would require political cooperation, which doesn't exist because everyone now in the U.S., especially with this Tea Party movement, is essentially become a black shirt or a brown shirt for the neo-fascist American oligopolies controlled by folks like the Koch brothers. But is there a spanner in the works? Is there a way to kind of hit the soft underbelly and poke the system in the eye? Does this question make sense? And if so, is there an answer? Damon Vrabel.
Yeah, the question makes a ton of sense. I think a lot of us have put a lot of time into thinking about it. And then some economists and monetary reformers, have ideas about how to fix the monetary system. But the reality is we're living in this Machiavellian world of those who have power and those who don't. And people that don't generally aren't even aware of this issue. And the people with it, they're not going to change it. So all these monetary reform ideas, until you get the people to wake up, they're not possible. But I think that's the key. I've mentioned before that spiritual awakening of some sort, I don't mean anything religious necessarily. I just mean an awakening to the reality of our lives and the meaninglessness of our lives right now as we just spin around on the hamster wheel to earn bank credit. That type of awakening is going to have to happen in order to solve this, because none of the monetary reform policies are going to be possible unless people wake up to the reality and the need for it.
All right, Damon Vrabel, thanks so much for being on The Edge.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of On the Edge with Max Keiser. I want to thank my guest, Damon Vrabel. His website is csper.org, and he's got a great series of videos right now to watch. I highly recommend it. If you want to send me an email, please do so at ontheedge@presstv.com. Until next time, this is Max Keiser saying bye, y'all.